I get a lot of people telling me that they've been prescribed Lorazepam or Xanax and asking me whether they should be taking it. So in today's episode, let's discuss what these medications do, why they're prescribed so frequently, and what your doctor might not be telling you. Let's begin. Hey friend, welcome back to Fearless Anxiety. I'm your host, Peter Wessels. All right, if you've been to your doctor or to a psychiatrist about your anxiety, there's a good chance that you walked out with a prescription for Lorazepam, Xanax, or a similar medication. This is exactly what happened to me. About 10 years ago, I developed severe anxiety, which began after a string of panic attacks. When I visited my doctor and told him what was happening to me, he quickly wrote a prescription for Xanax. He explained that I should take it whenever I feel a panic attack coming on. But what he didn't tell me was how these medications actually work. And your doctor likely left this part out too, so let's discuss what happens when you take these medications. All right, these types of benzo medications are designed to target a specific neurotransmitter in your brain called GABA. By targeting that neurotransmitter, what happens is it helps to reduce the activity of the neurons that create the feelings of anxiety, panic, and stress. In other words, these medications can alter your brain chemistry to help alleviate the feelings of anxiety. Taking these medications can sound pretty great. It did to me anyway. I mean, the idea that I could take a pill and my anxiety, my panic would go away for a bit, that sounded great. But what I didn't know and what my doctor didn't explain to me was that there were drawbacks. It's important to know these drawbacks, so let's go through them. First, drugs like Xanax and Lorazepam are only intended for short-term use. In other words, the manufacturers and the FDA have recommended that this not be taken for months or years because what can happen is it can lead to dependence. Developing dependence on a medication means that your body can begin to depend on the medication to function normally. So in other words, you can get trapped in a cycle where you begin having anxiety symptoms just because you're not taking the medication. That's not good. That's not what we want. Second, another reason that these drugs are prescribed for short-term use is because you can quickly develop a tolerance to them. What this means is that you can need a higher dosage just to get the same effect. So over time, you can start having to take a much larger dose of, let's say, Xanax, just to stop that panic attack. Generally speaking, higher doses mean higher likelihood of side effects. So again, that's not desirable. Third, benzos act as a depressant to your central nervous system, which means they slow down your brain activity. So when you take them, you can find yourself feeling sluggish or tired. Well, this is a downside because it means there are certain times that you won't want to take them. For instance, you might feel a panic attack coming on, but you're at school or you're at work, and you know that if you take it, it's going to impair your ability to perform in the classroom or at your job. Okay, so those are the three biggest drawbacks of taking benzo-type medications. Again, to recap, these medications are not for long-term use because of dependency and tolerance issues. And there are going to be times where you won't want to take them because they slow down and impair your cognitive thinking. Now, before we go any further, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be taking these types of medications. I'm sure that most of you are either taking one of these medications or have tried taking them in the past. I'm also not telling you to stop taking these medications if you're currently taking them. In fact, many of my clients are taking these prescriptions when they first meet me and only wean off them with their doctor's approval and as their recovery progresses. Again, I personally tried Xanax when I was suffering from anxiety. I didn't experience much of a benefit when I took it. It actually kind of made me feel drowsy and I'd still have pretty severe panic. But that hasn't skewed my perception of the effectiveness of these types of medications because I've had many clients that get instant relief from their anxiety and their panic when they do take medications like Xanax and Lorazepam. But here are the questions I think we should be asking. What happens when we build up a tolerance to these medications? What happens if we become dependent on these medications just to feel normal? And what do we do when we're having high anxiety or panic, but we can't take the medication because we're driving, we're working on a project at work, or we're about to take a test at school? These are the questions to ask ourselves. But here's the good news. The answer to all these questions is to implement what I call the fearless approach. The fearless approach is going to be your new response to anxiety. It is a 4-step approach to implement each time you experience anxiety or panic. See, what most people don't know about anxiety is that they're only experiencing anxiety because their nervous system is in a heightened and sensitized state. What I mean by this is your internal defense system, often referred to as your fight or flight response, is engaging unnecessarily when you're not in any real danger. Now, the fight or flight response has been an essential part of our survival. It's designed to protect us from real threats by triggering this cascade of physiological changes. It speeds up our heart rate, our breathing, and provides a surge of adrenaline. And that prepares us to either fight off a danger or run away from it. But when your nervous system becomes sensitized, it starts triggering this response even when you're completely safe. This is why you can be sitting on your couch watching TV and suddenly feel a wave of intense anxiety or a panic attack come on. What's important to understand, though, is that none of it is harmful. Instead, you need to remember that it's a natural biological response. So the feelings and sensations that you're experiencing, meaning the panic, the heart palpitations, the wave of anxiety, it's all just your body in a defensive state. To stop these sensations, what we have to do is we have to desensitize and calm down our nervous system. And that's where the fearless approach comes in. So here's what I want you to do. Next time you feel a wave of severe anxiety or panic coming on, I want you to implement step number 4 of the fearless approach. Here's how we do that. When you feel that sense of panic, instead of tensing up and becoming really fearful, you instead say to yourself, "Great, give me even more anxiety." If you can, I want you to even stand up and hop up and down a little bit while you say this. But conceptually, what you're doing is you're challenging your anxiety to do its worst. What you're going to notice is that your panic doesn't actually get worse when you do this. In other words, when you challenge your anxiety to get worse, you're actually going to find that your anxiety begins to decrease. In other words, by trying to increase your anxiety will actually come down to a much more manageable level. That's going to stop your panic attacks, and it's also going to lower your severe anxiety. It's going to put you back in the driver's seat where you're in control, and that's going to be a huge step forward in desensitizing your nervous system and fully recovering. For a breakdown of the entire fearless approach and the steps of recovery, I've put the 5-step cure to anxiety and panic attacks in the link below. It's completely free, and it's my gift for you for joining me here today. If you think this episode would be helpful to someone, please share it with them today. Also, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you hit the like button and the subscribe button before you leave. I'll see you on the next episode.